Hey, good evening. Mazel tov to all the assignment for finishing Maseches Horios and Baruch Hashem Seder Nezikin. It's a big one under the belt, thank God. Just less than 2 years to go. That's really no big deal. We're going to be great. We're now starting Maseches Zevachim, which broadly speaking talks about korbanos. Some of the helpful things to know as background is that when a korban is brought, there's 4 steps. There's shchita, kabbalah, holacha, and zrika. Shchita is the actual cut. Kabbalah is receiving the blood in a vessel. Holacha is walking that blood over to the place where it needs to be sprinkled. And the zrika, according to most Rishonim, is the ikar of every korban. If it's a kapara dika korban, that's when you get your kapara. We will be speaking throughout this Masechta and throughout this Seder a lot about shchita, a lot about all of these various steps. And that's just probably a basic background that we're going to start with, even though it doesn't specifically apply to today in full, although maybe in part. Let's get started with Maseches Zevachim, Daf Beis, right at the top. Kol HaZevachim in regards to all shchita. If they were shenizbechu shelo lishman, if they were shechted shelo lishman. So I brought a korban, but I didn't have the appropriate kavana when I brought that korban. The halacha is ksherim. The halacha is that the korban is kosher. However, ela shelo alu lebaylim l'shem chova. But the reason for which you brought it, you didn't check that box. So let's say I'm bringing a chatas, and I brought the chatas shelo lishma. The animal's edible. It's kosher, but you need another chatas. A little split, right? We're saying the animal's good because lishma has nothing to do with kosher. But lishma does have to do with being yotzei or chiyuv. So therefore, the animal's kosher, but you need to go get another chatas. Sorry, you didn't have the appropriate kavanah. Chutz min ha-pesach ve'achatas, except for the korban pesach and the chatas. I gave a chatas as an example. It's a bad example. These things you're not yotzei at all. If you're not yotzei. They're not kosher either. By the korban pesach and by chatas, you do need to have kavanah. So my first example wasn't a good one. And these lines that we're about to read are a little cryptic. Ha-pesach, when do we say that pesach is not going to be kosher when it's shelo lishma? That's when it's brought bismano. And ve'achatas b'chol zman, and this we'll have to unpack another day. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, af ha'asham, the same is true in regards to an asham. An asham is a korban that we sometimes might need to bring. Ha-pesach bismano ve'achatas ve'asham b'chol hazman. So what we're doing over here is Rabbi Eliezer is broadening the last halacha that we learned. We learned that the Pesach, the korban Pesach, when do we say that it's not even kosher without kavanah? That's bismano. And then we had said that the same thing was true was for a chatas, and Rabbi Eliezer adds in that the asham is also in that category. And Amar Rabbi Eliezer, hachatas ba al chet, ve'asham ba al chet, both of them have a common denominator, that a korban chatas as well as a korban asham are brought for chatoin. And therefore, we have a hekesh between the two, because they're similar in their function and that they help us to get kapara for a chet. Therefore, ma chatas psula shelo lishma, just like a chatas would be pasul if the korban was brought shelo lishma, afa asham pasul shelo lishma. The same would be true by an asham. Yossi ben Choni Omer, hanishchaten l'shem pesach u'l'shem chatas psulin. If you shecht an animal that really isn't the right animal, right? Let's say you shecht a cow for the korban pesach. So what's the halacha? The halacha is psul and they don't work at all. That's a 0. You have to shecht the correct animal. Third of the way down on Beis Amud Aleph, Shimon Achi Azariah. Shimon, who was the brother of Azariah. Take a look at a beautiful Rashi over here. Shimon Achi Azariah. Al Shem She'Azariah Asak B'Prakmatya. He went to go work. V'sipek tzorche Shimon Echa b'shashay osek b'Torah. It's the Issachar Zvulun relationship. That's why the Mishnah goes out of its way to name Azariah. Shimon was the learner. Azariah was the sugar daddy. He was the one who was working, and he had the Issachar Zvulun relationship. It's a great phrase. It's good. So that's what was going on over here. So let's look again inside. Shimon, who was the learner, Achi Azariah, who was funding him, Omer, Shachtan l'shem gavoa mehen ksherim. Okay, I agree that if you take a cow and shecht it for a korban pesach or for a chatas, it's psulin. However, if you take an animal and you shecht it for a higher cause, right? Let's say you take a seh and you bring it for a higher cause. So then if it's something higher than ksherim, but the opposite is not true. l'shem namuch mehen, if you're bringing a korban for a bigger korban for something smaller, in those cases, psulim. Ketzad, what's an example of this? And here we're going to be introduced to some important language that will permeate all of this Seder. Kodshe kodshem sheshachta l'shem kodshem kalam. Something that's kodshem, a higher level of kedusha, that was shechted for the sake of a lower level of kedusha, psulim. Same principle that we saw from the name of Shimon Achi Azariah. And of course, the other way is also true. Kodshem kalam sheshachta l'shem kodshe kodshem ksherim, because you elevated the korban to a higher level. HaBechor ve'amaiser sheshachta l'shem shlamim ksherim, the korban of the Bechor and the Meiser, which is every 10th animal. We know, of course, that when animals had to be given as Meiser, you didn't count the animals and then divide by 10. You had to walk them through a pen. You had to walk them through the doorway of a pen, and every 10th one was marked. So if those korbanos were then elevated for a shlamim, you just kicked it up a notch. Halacha is ksherim. However, shlamim, if you have a higher level of kedusha of a shlamim, sheshachta l'shem Bechor l'shem Meiser psulim. So here, as the Gemara opens 2/3 of the way down, the Gemara is bothered by a little bit of an extra word that can be found in our Mishnah. Lama li lemisna ella shelo alu. Take a look at the first line of our, the first couple of lines of our Mishnah. We said all korbanos that are shechted shelo lishma are kosher. Ella shelo alu bailim l'shem chova. Ella, extra word. So it says the Gemara, why did we say the word ella? Listening, instead it should say, let's just read it inside. Kol hazvachim shenizbechu shelo lishman ksherim. Vilo alu lebailim l'shem chova. We save a word. We save a word. Why did it say Ella? That's a weird syntax. We shouldn't even have that extra word because we don't need. What's the Ella? Ella is a contrasting word. Just say what you mean to say. If you have an animal that was shechted shelo lishma, it's kosher, and you need a new korban. What's Ella? So says the Gemara, Hakamash Mulan, it does come to teach us a chiddush dekadin that we wouldn't have known. Lebailim hu delo alu l'shem chova, aval biktushtaihu kaimi. That if you have a case scenario of the bailim who were not alu l'shem chova, they did the first thing wrong, but they're still kedusha. So let's say that of the 4-step process, you have shchita, holacha, kabbalah, zrika. Those are the 4 steps. Let's say by shchita I didn't have kavana. So do I throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, forget it, I'm not having any more kavana for the rest? No, you have to have kavana for the rest. That's why we had the word Ella in the Mishnah. So let's read this again inside. The bailim, they didn't have the right kavana, but the korban is still kadosh. The aser lishnuye behu, and you're not allowed to change the other aspects of the shchita. So let's say, for example, of the 4 steps, you did the shchita shelo lishma, but the remaining 3 steps should be done lishma. And where do we see this? From Rava. The Amar Rava. Ola, if you have a korban ola, sheshachta shelo lishma, the shchita itself was done shelo lishma. Aser lizrok dama shelo lishma. Right? This is exactly the principle that we're seeing from the word Ella. What does the word Ella teach us in the Mishnah? It's an extra word. It teaches us a very important rule. Rebbe just added that extra word so that he could hint to us a very important halacha. Is that if I mess up the first step or the second step of a korban, whatever it is, the subsequent steps still need to be done b'kavana. You're right. You're still not yotze, and you still need to get another chatas, whatever animal you're supposed to. That's true. But we still are supposed to do it correctly. So if I had no kavana on either the shchita or the holacha or the kabbalah, the subsequent steps still need to be done b'kavana. That's what we learned from the word Ella.
It's like a very big halacha to be gotten through a remes of the word Ella.
I agree with you. Struck me exactly the same way.
Glad we're on the same page.
Rabbi Tzvi Zimmerman gave a shiur to an NCSY group that I was at about 10 years ago. And one of the things that he said is that the Torah Shebechsav is filled with ramazim that are dinei deoraisa. And he went through a whole bunch of them. You know, we have like, what was the example of Yehyeh by Sota, the gematria of 30, that we know Stam Nazirus is Shloshim Yom. Nazirus is a din deoraisa. We're making a drasha from the pasuk of the Yud and the Hey and the Yud of Yehyeh. So other than the broad stroke answer of we do that all the time, I still agree with you. So I can't give you an answer because I'm with you. And I don't have an answer. He can give you an answer. He's been through shots like a bunch of times. But nevertheless, that's what the Gemara says, is that the word Ella is what teaches that to us. And how do we know this idea to be true? That we need to continue to doing the rest of the process properly, even if we messed up on one of the earlier steps. So Rava told us what the halacha is, but why is that the halacha? So it says the Gemara, Ibai sema svara, Ibai sema kra. I can give you a rationale, and I can also give you a pasuk. So it says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom, Ibai sema svara, mishum deshaniba, just because you messed up on the first one, called hani lishni ba v'lezel. You should go and be lenient on all the other ones. Rabbi Reznik in the shiur that I was listening to quoted a din that we've heard by fasting. Misha achal shum, yachzor v'yochal shum. If you ate garlic and it gave you bad breath, should you go back and eat more garlic? You should probably stop eating the garlic, right? So the Gemara is saying the same idea. We're al svara. It's not a meaty answer, but al svara, just because you messed up on the first step, why would you then mess up on the other steps? I can actually answer that question because it doesn't matter. That's why I should have been able to be lenient. So I don't understand this svara fully. Once I know that the animal is kosher, but I'm not yotze my chiyuv, having kavanah on the last 3 steps don't matter. It doesn't matter at all. So anyways, the Gemara still accepts this as a svara, or maybe that's why we have the kra, could be. Sometimes we have that also. And ibai sema kra, and maybe perhaps we have a pasuk. The pasuk says in Sefer Dvarim, Motza sifasecha tishmor. You should be careful what exits your mouth. Ve'asisa ka'asher nadarta la'Hashem Elokecha, and you should do that which you made a neder for. Keyword here, neder, contrasting with the next word, nidava asher dibarta beficha. So this is obviously a difficult pasuk because we said a neder and a nidava in the same pasuk. We have Maseches Nidarim. We don't have Maseches Nidavos. They're obviously not the same thing. So says the Gemara, Hi Nadava? How can you say that it's a Nadava? Nederhu. The beginning of the pasuk tells us clearly that it's talking about a neder. So how did you switch to the language of Nadava? So says the Gemara on the top of Beis Amid Beis, Ela im kain shenadarta asi. So if you made a neder, yehei neder, givaldik. V'im lo, if you didn't fulfill it, then nadavahu. Then you still need to fulfill it for other reasons. Even if you broke the neder, you still need to bring it as a nadava. So nadava yehei. And what do we...
Which goes on the address, which goes on the first?
Oh, I don't remember that one. I just know, I think their language is different, but I don't know the answer to that.
What is
Rashi at the top of the page. I didn't think it was what you said. I thought it was language. Rashi says on the top line, V'yesh chiluk ben neder l'nadava. Neder da amar hare alai, unadava harezu.
The neder, he has to complete it. The object goes away.
It's a nafkamina, right? That's a nafkamina. But how do you generate a neder versus a nadava, which was, I think, was Gerald's question. So Rashi is telling us that when you say hare alai, that's a neder. When you say harezu, right? Hare alai is on the person. That's the right way to answer your question. Harezu is on an object. You can't get rid of it. Right. So the Gemara wants to infer from here that now we know you always need to do things the right way, even if you couldn't do the neder, but we still want you to do the neder. Says the Gemara 2 lines down in the dava, mishari lishnuyeba. What do you mean? Are you able to make any changes with a neder? So says the Gemara, Amar le Ravina le Rav Papa. Ravina says to Rav Papa, sorry, I didn't read that correctly. Unadava mishar lishnuyeba. This is the end of his point. It was the end of the pasuk, the end of the point that the Gemara was making. And if you do need to do an adava, unadava, this is rhetorical. Mishar lishnuyeba. Are you able to not do the nadava the right way? Of course you need to do the nadava the right way. So even though we changed from neder to nadava, you still need to do it the right way. Even though you messed up on the shechita, you still need to do the next 3 steps, the halacha, kabbalah, and zrika. You still need to do them the right way. A little bit of a story that's going to become very connected to our Gemara. 3 lines down. Amar le Ravina le Rav Papa. Lo havis kaban beurta. You were not with us last night, Ravina says to Rav Papa, betchuma becharmecha, in this particular location. The Rami Rava mili ma'al yasa ahadade v'shanilu. That Rava, he brought stiras together and then answered them. So this is going to be what we're going to see over the next couple of days. And really, between now and the bottom of the page, we're only going to see one of these questions that Rava put together, and we'll see a host of answers. So it says the Gemara Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Our Mishnah, Kol Zevachim shenizbechu shelo lishman. So let's just say this in English. If you do a shchita shelo lishma, it's kosher, but you're not yotze. What's the diuk? Taima de shelo lishman. The reason why it's kosher, but you're not yotze, is because it was shelo lishma. Hastama. But what if you had neutral intent? Not lo lishma, which seemingly is being explained here as negative intent, which is very different than what we would have thought. This story I've shared many times. I did a bris for this woman, only found out afterwards that she was a goy, that she was a yid. So the bris was shelo lishma. It wasn't negative kavana. It was neutral kavana because the goy. I didn't think it was a bris. It was neutral. So here we're defining in our Mishnah, shelo lishman is active negative, right? I'm saying I don't want to be yotze. And the diuk is that taima de shelo lishman hastama alu nami lebaylam l'shem chova. That really, had it been neutral, then in addition to the food being kosher, unlike our Mishnah, you would have also been yotze. So neutral status counts as lishma. Alma, stama, nami, kilishman, dami. Therefore, a stam intent seems to be similar to a lishma intent. But there's three categories. There's lishma, there is stam, and there is shelo lishma. And we're trying to figure out, where does stam fall on the continuum? Is stam like shelo lishma, or is stam like lishma? So our Gemara wants to posit that stama nami kilishman dami. Okay, but that's a problem. Because the Raminhi, we have a brisa going all the way back to Maseches Gittin. Kol haget shenichtav shelo l'shem isha pasal. Any get that was not written for the sake of a woman is pasal. And what do we see over here? Ustama nami pasal. So what does stama look like? Stama looks like shelo lishma. So now we have a stira. From our Mishnah, it implies that stama is lishma. But from the brisa in Gittin, might be a Mishnah, I don't know. But from the brisa in Gittin, it seems over there that stam is lo lishma. So which one is it? Is neutral defaulting to lishma, or does neutral stam default to shelo lishma? So it says the Gemara Bishani, how does Rava answer this up? With really a very beautiful and simple answer. Rava says, a quarter of the way down, Zevachim bistam lishman omden. When a person is bringing an animal, why are you standing in that building with an animal? Your baseline is that you're bringing a korban. What else would you be doing there? So even if you say nothing, context matters. If I'm standing in the chotzer holding a cow, and people will be like, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. No, I'm just chilling. That's why. No, you're bringing a korban. So Zevachim bistam lishman omden. However, isha bistama lav legerushin omedes. But when it comes to a woman, that's not the standard that every time you see a woman, she's omedes legittin. That's for sure not the case. She's omedes legerushin. So this is Rava's beautiful response. You have to look and see what's going on. The average woman doesn't get divorced. The average cow that is brought to the Beis HaMikdash gets shechted. So that is the distinction to be made over here. And the Gemara, at least up until now, seems to accept this standard. And the Gemara then asks, Uzvachim bistama ksherin minalan. How do we know that a korban that had stam, that had neutral intent, how do we know that it's in fact kosher? So the Gemara is going to present 4 answers, and then we will be stopping toward the bottom of the page. If you want to say that I know that a korban that was done bistam is kosher, if you want to say that it's from our Mishnah of kol hazvachim shenizbechu shelo lishman, our Mishnah says shelo lishman. It doesn't flip the language. V'lo ktani shelo nizbechu lishman, that it wasn't done lishma. It was shenizbechu shelo lishman. So the word lishman is not by itself. It's lo lishman. The same thing, if that's true, the same thing is true. Gabe get nami aktani kol haget shenichtav shelo l'shem isha pasal v'lo ktani shelo nichtav l'shem isha pasal. It also doesn't have that different language. So you wanted to say that that might be the source, our Mishnah. You can't say that our Mishnah is the source, that Zevachim Stam is kosher. We reject that because of the Mishnah or the Brisa in Maseches Gittin. And therefore, a third of the way down, we provide our second answer as to how we know Zevachim Bistama are ksherin. What's a case scenario where we have two different intentions? One is lishma, one is not. So says the Gemara, l'shem Pesach u l'shem shlamim. You're bringing the korban Pesach. You have two kavanas. One is it should be the specific korban of a Pesach. The other is that it should be the broad korban of a shlamim. So one's lishman and one is shelo lishman because it's really off. So says the Gemara, Taima, the reason why this would be possible is the Amr l'shem Pesach u l'shem shlamim. Had he said ha l'shem Pesach v'stama kosher, had all he said was l'shem Pesach and stam, would have been kosher. Alma staman kilishman dami. So therefore we might have our answer. Says the Gemara, no we don't. Dilma shiny hasam da'arminan kol osa al das rishonahu osa. Maybe when he said shlamim, it really was just it's the same thing as the first one. It was just, you just kept foaming at the mouth. But really, it's really just copying the first language, and therefore no proof from here. So the Gemara then tries its third answer, a little bit more than halfway down, as to how we know that Zevachim Bistama are ksherin. Helmi Seifa, that which we just learned, the Brisa of Ketzad Lishman v'Shelo Lishman, so that can be found a little bit later in this Masechta on Daf Yud Gimel. And the Seifa of that source says, Shelo lishman v'lishman, the reverse. Where do we have shelo lishman followed by lishman? That's if you're bringing a korban pesach and you say l'shem shlamim u l'shem pesach. Taima. Why is it that korban is not kosher? The amar l'shem shlamim u l'shem pesach. You said both, but hastama u l'shem pesach. If you didn't say anything in regards to the shlamim and you said l'shem pesach, we would see that it's kosher. So that shows us that stam kavana is perfectly kosher.
Now, designating a pesach, does that only have to be? Can that be before the Zman or only during the Zman?
This is talking about the shechita itself, I believe. Yeah, it's talking about the shechita itself, so it's bisman. I believe so. So the Gemara says this is also not a raya from the Seifa of that Gemara in Yud Gimel, because Dil Mashani Hasam Damrin and Yochiach Sofa Al Tchilaso, because maybe the latter comment of Pesach is falling back on the Shlamim comment, and that is why it is not approved. Inami aidi de tano lishman v'shelo lishman, tanonami shelo lishman v'lishman. Or maybe we just wanted the Mishnah to be the Mishnah on Yud Gimel to be symmetrical, and therefore you can't make a diuk from the language at all. So now let's learn our last source, and with this we're going to close for the day. We're a little bit late, but sorry. Elameha, we're going to learn it from here. And this is found much later in the Masechta on Daf Memvav. L'shem shisha dvar ma'zevach nizbach. There are 6 reasons as to why a person might bring a korban. L'shem zevach, stam, for the sake of the korban. L'shem zoveach, for the person bringing the korban. L'shem Hashem, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. L'shem ishim, for the fire. L'shem reach, for the smell. L'shem nichoach, we'll learn about this a little bit later, not today, but another time in the Gemara what this means. B'chatas v'asham l'shem chet. Those 2 korbanos are always brought for a chet. And Amar of Yossi, Af mishelo haya belibo l'shem achas mikol elu kasher shetanai bezdin hu. Oh, now we're going to learn a very important klal, and we need to hold on to this, which is a Tanai bezdin, a specific Tanai bezdin that we should never say what our kavana is when we're bringing a korban. The exact opposite of what we would have thought. Asnu bezdin delo lema lishmo. Don't say the reason that you're doing it is for whatever achatas. Don't say that. Because you might end up saying the wrong thing and you'll be all messed up. And if you want to say that having neutral kavana is going to be pasul, are you really going to say that the chachamim or misakein that you should specifically have neutral intent and it's not going to be kosher? Pasha, that's not true. So therefore, this takanas bezdin is how we know that stama, if a person has neutral intent, that the korban would be kosher. We're going to stop right here, 6-7 lines from the bottom. The Nir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with Daf Gimel. Wishing you all a beautiful night.